This is Team Objection podcast for August 5th, 2021, episode 493. The original crew is back. We had a week off, and then we had a week where I just did a review with Michaela, so now it's time to bring back the fearsome threesome and talk about the saddest we've been in the recent history of our lives.
So sad that neither of you wore the appropriate shirt.
Well, the season's over, so there's no longer any need to support them.
Yep. Well, I mean, we
I still
can't.
do.
We can't fix your bad decisions, Dave.
I don't think it's a bad decision to stick by your team through.
It is. No, I'm just kidding.
That's called fair weather fan. That's called being a Lakers fan, Shaun.
It actually took this long for me to feel like ready to do a postseason thing, because I certainly did. We had talked about like maybe the week after, and I'm so glad we didn't do that because I have so many emotions.
I feel like it would have been a much different podcast had we done it immediately after the game versus now, or even last week before free agency started. So it would be a much different podcast last week.
And we'll talk about all those feelings, don't you worry. But first, we basically have to just go over the nuts and bolts of what happened, which is to say, we recorded a podcast after game 1, riding high, and did end up winning game 2 as well, and then lost 4 straight, including part of the week that we were off. And we had talked about, well, if we housed it in if, but if the Suns won the title, maybe we would do one after. That one would have been cool to get our reactions right after. They did not. They got blown out in game 3, and then were competitive in all of game 4, 5, and 6, but came up just short in all 3 of them. And the Bucks won the title, and we sat there and watched the whole ceremony, and then sat there quietly for about a half an hour, and then went and got frozen yogurt.
I'm glad that we watched the ceremony, actually. I thought I was going to... So, in talking about how many emotions I had, I thought some of those were going to be like anger and hatred. And I found myself not really feeling any of it. I surprised myself by thinking, if it wasn't us, at least it was this seemingly pretty cool Milwaukee team.
And it wasn't like... Unlike seemingly every single other playoffs in history, it wasn't some fluke. It wasn't some, hey, our guy got hurt, something weird happened, somebody, an air ball rebound putback happened. Like, nothing insane happened. I mean, you could, I guess, call Giannis scoring 50 in the clinching game insane, but that's just a great player playing great.
Well,
I mean,
I almost agree with you, Dave. And this is kind of it, because one of the things I would have said had we aired this a week ago would have been, Chris Paul just didn't seem like himself. I don't know what it was. And now we know he just hurt his left wrist. And it's like, yeah. So one of the things we thought of why he wasn't playing up to his standards, and it was exactly that. And if I had to, if I had to pin the biggest reason, we had plenty of chances to win. There were certain plays that could have gone our way. I'm not going to say that was make or break, but it was probably the biggest factor. He scored 41 and then hurt his wrist. I think we saw it. I think we noticed it. I think it was in game 2.
Yep.
And we're like, ooh, I hope that's not a bad thing. And it was.
His injuries were so bad that he talked about having torn ligaments in the series prior. So when it was re-aggravated, it was like, well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me, I suppose, because that's not the type of injury that just heals overnight. It's not a sprain or even like a really bad sprain or something where maybe there's a certain timetable to it. Torn ligaments, man, that's tough to adjust. And we saw exactly the same thing that we saw in the Lakers series from a not healthy Chris Paul, which was he couldn't even dribble properly. And the moves that he was expecting to make that he had done thousands, if not tens of thousands of times in his career, he couldn't do without thinking about it. And so he was a little more careless. The ball got away from him. He had critical turnovers. And as Shaun said, this is not to pin the entire thing on Chris Paul. By no means. He's the reason we got there in the first place. Yep. It's just when you look at, if you had to pick one factor, it's probably that. To me, it's that or the fact that Milwaukee played their best basketball in the finals. Yeah, it's one of those two.
By far.
I think that was more of along lines of what I was thinking of. This team that beat us played really, really well and had to play really, really well to beat us. It wasn't like we shot ourselves in the foot necessarily. There were plays that could have gone the other way. Booker getting the ball stolen in Game 5 is the prime example of that. But it was a great play by Jrue Holiday. So
yeah, it was. And at least it wasn't like, man, it's frustrating because he hacked him. And it was a clean play. It sucks that it was an injury that contributed to the absolute biggest thing with Milwaukee, which was they're not so good in the half court. They're really good in transition. So all of those turnovers by Chris Paul, even if they weren't direct, he is the orchestrator of the offense. And when he's not playing well, everything sort of breaks down. And we had a ton of turnovers.
Yep. And it's crazy too, because game 5 that we lost, Chris Paul, I don't believe, had a great scoring game, but the team played out of their minds shooting wise. If I remember properly, I want to say we were like 12 of 20 from 3 or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact number because it's been a little while, but like we shot the lights out from 3 that game and still lost. And it was just one of those, seemingly every time we had a attack or started to come back, Milwaukee had an answer for us. And that sucks.
13 of 19 from 3.
There you go. I was pretty close then. Even better than what I said.
I think game 4 hurt the most for me personally. And like, I'm thinking back and it should be game 5, but something just clicked in game 4 of like, oh, I think we're in big trouble now. And I had to like reconcile within myself the fact that we could lose after having a really strong hope that we were going to win. And then I think once I came to peace with that, the subsequent losses were easier to handle for me.
Yeah.
For me, it was game 5 because that was a 16-point lead at the end of the first quarter that was erased in about 4 minutes and 23 seconds of game time. Not the fact that they blew the lead. I've talked about this off air, so I'm not going to go into it a ton, but the fact that they blew it so quickly, everything you had fought so hard, all the crowd momentum gone in the span of 4 minutes of game time and only like 6 minutes of real time. There was only one timeout in there.
Yeah.
To throw that all away with a bench unit. I mean, Booker's plus minus in that game was pretty absurd because he was off the floor when the bulk of the damage happened. And as a result, again, that lead was gone. So even by halftime, we were down 3, I think. And you quickly knew, okay, this is going to be a fight the rest of the way. And it was. But we trailed for almost all that fight. And then, sure enough, in a critical possession, we were already down and couldn't afford a turnover, and it happened. Yeah. So those hurt.
I agree. That game 5 hurt the most because I looked back at it this past week. We were down by 8 with 2:15 left or so in the game and cut it to 1 with 25 seconds left or whatever it was. And because Booker hit a 3 to cut it to 3 at one point, Chris Paul had a layup. Honestly, when Booker hit that 3 and Chris Paul hit that layup back-to-back, I really thought we were going to win that game. And so having the steal happen, losing the game like that was one of those gut punches.
Yep.
Game 6... I don't know that I ever felt like we were winning that game, even though we were in it nearly the entire time. And I don't know if that was just the Suns defeatist coming out or if it was just the karma, because as we all know, we have a profound impact on what happens. And so after series after series of being very cautious in how I approached how I thought we were going to do, to then have the podcast be like, you know what? Yeah, I think it's us. And we're all like, yeah, Suns in 5, Suns in 6. And that's when everything fell apart. I thought about that in the back of my head. I don't actually think it was a factor, but a little part of me is like, oh, God, that doesn't look great.
Yeah, of course.
Here's your solace, is you did say in the Clippers series, Suns in 4, this series is over. And we ended up winning. We didn't win in 4, but we ended up winning. Mm-hmm. So you were a little boisterous in the Clippers series, and we still pulled it out. So it's not you.
I didn't actually think Suns in 4 in that series. I just hated the Clippers so goddamn much that I was trying to manifest it in the universe. And that's my biggest takeaway, honestly. It was after the series was over, I was with Shaun. I was like, I like Milwaukee. There's not really a single player that I despise, whereas there were 4 that I actively hate on the Clippers, and a handful more I don't particularly care for.
Yeah.
That was the series where I was most vehemently rooting for us, and I even mentioned it on air. It was more for them to lose than it was for us to win, which is a weird feeling when we're that close to an NBA Finals and or a championship, but that's how I felt.
And then you look at Milwaukee's roster, and I guess Bobby Portis I hated the most. Outside of that, it's like, I don't.
And he can't help the way he looks.
I mean, yeah, but he's also insane. So
yeah,
he's
a little insane.
And he was flopping around on top of Chris Paul at one point when there was a jump ball set up. And I mean, but he's kind of crazy, and that's what's endeared fans to him. And it's the same reason that we love Jay Crowder right now, and everybody else hates him. He's one of those guys, those glue guys, who contributes, but also is a thorn in your side, and you hate him until he plays for you.
Yeah.
So that's our finals recap. We could talk for the entire hour about it, but the fact is, it's done. We lost. So let's look back on the season as a whole before we turn our attention to next season and what the future might hold. With this being the end result, which was beyond anyone's expectations. I don't think there's anybody who had the Suns in the NBA Finals at the start of the season. We were among the most optimistic, and we were like, yeah, they might host a playoff series, 4th, 5th. So we blew past everything with a group that was close-knit, but does the fact that we were that close, up 2-0 in the NBA Finals, sour the experience whatsoever for you, or do you walk away from this going, didn't happen, but it was worth the journey?
Oh, that's a good question. Absolutely worth the journey, but my feelings about it, that's an interesting thing because the hope welled up so much and I really thought we had it. And so to have that taken away, it hurts. But I think the more distance that's put between it, we're only going to look back on this year and think wow, we so far exceed our expectations. Couple things went a different way. We could have won the title, and to ascend that much in a single year, I think is really impressive. And it's something that we're never going to forget, even though we didn't manage to take it all the way.
Yeah. I kept saying throughout the playoff run in my confidence that I was feeling, which is a weird feeling, by the way, having that much confidence in the team and where we were going to go. I kept thinking, man, I feel really, really good about this team, and I feel really, really good about our chances of winning the title. And especially after Brooklyn went out, I was like, holy shit, we might win this thing. We were really good shit. We're the favorites to win this thing. I just kept waiting for the gut punch. The oh my God, I can't believe this happened, like it has every other year in Suns history. And it never really came. So this wasn't a gut punch. It was just more of a letdown, slowly torture over time, which is a unique feeling that I'm not used to feeling as a Suns fan. So I don't know how to reconcile this as far as seasons past go, because every other seasons past we've had something really, really bad happen and not made the finals or gotten close and then some crazy happened. So we always are left to imagine, man, if we would have just made the finals, sure, we would have beat the Celtics in 2010. Yeah, we would have beat the Cavs in 2007, all those types of things. This year we don't really have to wonder or have that, sure, that would have happened, because we got there. And so I think overall, as time goes on, I am for sure going to feel up about this and be really happy that we had this journey, and am excited for the hope of the future.
I'm sort of torn because, like you guys, when the Nets went out and the Bucks had to limp through that series to do so against a Nets team that was basically propped up by Kevin Durant and half of James Harden and whatever Joe Harris could shoot on a given night, it seemed, and then they lost game 1 of the Hawks, which is easy to forget. And then Giannis blew out his knee, seemingly. All of those things combined, it just seemed like that was in alignment with the other breaks that we had gotten throughout the postseason that were rare for us, as Dave alluded to. Usually we were on the short end of the stick when it came to a bad call, a stupid suspension, an injury. It all seemed to be lining up perfectly between the injuries in each round before and the 8-and-oop, winning a game that we really had no business winning, a game that it feels like we lose 99 times out of 100 in our history. It did sort of feel like this must be it. And I talked with this about you guys, to you guys about this, but it seemed like when we had that house, we didn't rent it in Phoenix having any inclination whatsoever that we would be in the hunt. We joked about how, hey, the finals are still going, we might catch a game or two. Like, this is the cutoff date of the season, and we're going to be there. And all of a sudden, it was like, if there is a parade, we will be in town already. Like that. Obviously, our little corner of the universe has no impact on stuff, but from our own perspective, it's like, man, maybe this is it, and it wasn't. Now, does that really sour it for me? I don't think so, because I don't really let my expectations get super high to begin with, which cushions me when I get hurt like this. So I walked out of it going, oh man, that sucked. But about a day in between Game 4 and Game 5, I was like, yeah, we're not winning this series. And I was hoping to be proven wrong in Game 5, because we win Game 5, obviously we're in phenomenal position. Doesn't guarantee anything, but it erases what happened in Milwaukee. Didn't happen, so at that point I watched Game 6 with a heaping hoping of, yeah, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And I think I got a little too, on the opposite side of Chris, I got a little bit too bought into our own hype, because when we're up 2-0, after winning Game 1, just really kind of beating them. And then Game 2, we just shot the lights out from 3. I'm like, oh, good, we can have a game where we don't shoot great and still beat them. And then all of a sudden we shoot the lights out. Like, we've got this. We can beat them in any sort of way they're going to throw at us. I started to think, man, we got this. And I started thinking, like, man, what about next season? What about like Chris Paul keeps playing like this? What's gonna happen? Like, are we gonna be a dynasty type of thing? And I let my mind go there, which I shouldn't have. And now the flip side of that is shit, we lost. Maybe we did just get a little lucky getting there. Like we did have a lot of breaks. What if that doesn't happen next year? Like, I mean, we're good. We can do it, but uh-oh.
Well, yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I think there's a difference though in being like in acknowledging, wow, we made it really far. The core is going to be here. This could be something, and having it a main talking point on ESPN before we've even won our first one. Are the Suns a dynasty? Yee, that's a little preemptive, I think. Let's slow our roll. But again, you know, the Chris Paul thing, I don't know. I keep going back to that now because I'm like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Chris Paul being unable to play, I actually think that would have been better in a lot of ways. The issue is campaign was also sort of ailing a little bit from the previous series, so it's not a perfect solution, but would I rather have like a X% Chris Paul or a much higher percent campaign? And then you know from the beginning what you have. The team is like not wondering like, Chris, what's going on? You keep turning it over. What are we getting from you? And you're probably going to get a lot less turnovers at the very least. I don't know. It does no good to think about that now. It's over. But that's the stuff that always bothers me is injuries. But then you play through them and it's like... it's hard to know in the moment, but then you look back and you're like, maybe that wasn't the right call.
I mean, Milwaukee's defense deserves some of the credit, but Chris Paul, as we noted way early in the season when they first acquired him, has never had a season in which he averaged more than 3 turnovers a game. He had 21 in games 3 through 6.
Yep.
Which is more than 5 a game for those of you who are not quick on the math.
Yep.
So that's a ton, and I don't think you can attribute that all to Milwaukee's defense, but especially because when you go back and look at them, there are passes that are out of rhythm. There are passes that he normally makes and couldn't seem to get enough zip on. Like, yes, Holiday picked his pocket a few times, and he's a phenomenal defender, but a lot of those were careless, unforced errors, and you have to think that his injuries were part of why.
Yep.
And then in games 5 and 6 that games 4, 5, and 6 that were close the entire way, that you were tied going into the fourth quarter, had a lead in some of them, or down by 1 with seconds. I mean, those few points make a huge difference. And
yeah. But then he was injured earlier. And Lakers series, and there was some of the COVID stuff in the Clippers series, and it's like, well, you got to rest him. You would have missed out on the huge games that he had. So, I mean, hindsight 2020, definitely. It's much easier for us to look back, but it's hard now losing the finals to not wonder, like, what if we just had Campaign and Etuan? They're not as good as Chris Paul, but they might be as good for team like chemistry than an injured, hobbled Chris Paul.
Yeah, you would have also had to handcuff Chris Paul to a chair for him not to get out there.
That's true. And you know what? To that point, we were able to re-sign him, and it seemed like a pretty seamless process. And I think it's if you sit Chris Paul in the finals when he's like, "Please let me play," it might not be so seamless.
Yep. I mean, the bottom line to me is this: the Bucks beat us; they were better.
Yep.
Giannis was phenomenal, and I don't think there's a lot of luster off the Suns season when we lost to a better team and there wasn't really any fluke to it. I do feel like if Chris Paul is even remotely healthy, with Booker scoring 40-plus in both Game 4 and 5, there's no way we lose both games.
Yep.
And who knows, from there, we could still lose it in 7. A win in Game 6 in Milwaukee is not guaranteed if we're up 3-2. So that's going to be something that is at least a little bit frustrating no matter what. But given the breaks that we had, I don't give a fuck about the Denver series, for the record. I don't give a damn about Jamal Murray. People bring that up like it's a foregone conclusion the Nuggets win that series, and I don't give a goddamn. I'm not saying they couldn't. But the idea that they'd be even favored with Murray in the lineup, get the hell out of here with that.
I literally had somebody online argue that with me, that the Suns would have lost that series if Murray played. I was like, we swept them by 15 points a game. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
I know obviously he's good, but Jesus.
Like the Anthony Davis thing absolutely helped us. Who knows with that series? We did win Game 1 with him healthy, everybody healthy, right? But that's a tough one. That's one where I look at it, and Shaun and I were hesitant to pick the Suns to go past the first round because of what that represented with him healthy. And the Kawhi thing, I mean, that's tough for me to say. I think the Clippers are probably favored slightly in that series with him healthy, but who knows? Denver, absolutely not. But at the end of the day, I'm glad the Bucks were healthy. There's no question marks about it. If they'd beaten us without a healthy Giannis, or if Giannis hadn't played, that would have hurt a lot more.
Yeah.
Him destroying us like he's destroyed so many other teams, tip your hat.
Yep.
I mean, hindsight, I remember Shaun saying before the series that you wanted Giannis to play because you want to beat him at their best. Hindsight, I wish he wouldn't have played, obviously, because then we could have had a title. But
I mean, it's hard to imagine Middleton and Holiday carrying them. So they couldn't even shoot that well for most of the series with Giannis attracting all this attention and gravity. So, again, you can't know the what ifs, but I like our odds if Giannis isn't playing that series.
Yeah, I still don't think you can hope for that, though. Like, you got to hope that they're going to be at their best. And if they beat us at their best, then fine. But
yeah, but I still want to see a title before I die. And
too much emphasis on the title. I'm all about the journey of what this is, and it would be super nice to win, of course, but it was a hell of a season, and it's why I am so excited. I needed a little bit. I needed like a couple of weeks, but it's why I'm so excited for next season. I found myself the other day being like, oh, like basketball is going to be back in October. Like I'm excited to just like watch games again and like lower stakes games. I think that'll be nice too.
And it's August. So, like, we're 2 months away, technically. It's more than that. But, we're that close to a new training camp and a new season starting, which is the benefit of running so deep in the season and it being late for COVID. But still, it's going to be easy to forget because that's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Man, the idea of turning a game on at halftime to be like, oh, how are we doing? Cool, I'll watch the rest of this, as opposed to, holy shit, I have to watch every single moment of every single play and digest it and read about it.
And if we lose, like, it's going to feel good to be like, oh, we'll get them next time, and not like, oh, God, what are the implications? What are the adjustments going to be?
How many minutes of Booker going to play? Yeah.
Let me just say really quick that I got some, I was reading some things of like, will the short offseason damage the Suns' youth development? And I was like, maybe in a vacuum, but I think playing in the finals probably is better development than anything you're going to do on the offseason by yourself.
Yeah, like Jalen Smith's development, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Like his offseason shorter as a result, but anybody else who is a core rotation player, probably better to play meaningful games.
I don't think Bridges is going to be like, I wish I wasn't in the finals so I could have hit the weight room.
Yeah. And Jalen Smith's playing in summer league. He's got plenty of time to develop.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hilarious because people want that both ways. It was, well, how can the Suns make it deep when they're so young and inexperienced? Now they get the experience. It's like, well, would it have been better if they hadn't gotten the experience? Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yep.
That's stupid. I mean, what better experience can you get than playing against the best in the world on the biggest stage? Yeah. Like this is nothing but good. Ayton proved himself throughout the entire season as, okay, you can be a defensive anchor and a pretty good offensive player. Mikal Bridges proved himself as you can be the perfect, third option, fourth option. Like every single thing we could have hoped for in this playoffs pretty much happened as far as player development goes, I think.
There's dog arguments happening. It's fine. So we sort of transition then into looking forward, as we just mentioned, and this is being recorded on Tuesday night, as per usual. There's a lot of free agency yet to come. The majority of players are off the board now, but there's still plenty of moves to be made, and the Suns still need to fill at least 3 roster slots no matter what. So we don't know entirely what this looks like, but just based on the big stuff, the core stuff so far, it's Chris Paul back on a 4-year, $120 million contract. That isn't really a 4-year, $120 million contract. We'll talk about that in a minute.
It's actually like a steal. Okay, but yeah.
It's Campaign back on a 3-year, $19 million deal, which is a steal.
Another steal.
It is Abdul Nader back on basically a 2-year, $4 million deal, which is fine, especially given the loss of Torrey Craig, who signed for 2 years, $10 million with Indiana. And the big new person, who's the pitcher of the next segment, which is a mistake on my part, is JaVale McGee. 1 year, $5 million in the mid-level exception, which can be split, but now we basically have $4.5 million left for potentially some other player, as well as some veteran minimum and a couple other cap hijinks. So it's basically the old squad. It's JaVale McGee in, it's Torrey Craig out, and it's effectively Dario Saric out because he blew out his leg and he can't play. With that being the case, and we'll get to the other teams' moves in the last segment here, just with what the Suns did, do you like the fact that it's going to be basically the same crew? Is there anything else you wish they had done or that you wish they would still do, given that there are moves left to be made?
We need more at the 4 is our only thing, because I don't think running Jay Crowder and Cam Johnson as our primary power forwards, especially with Dario Saric out, is going to be enough. And unless Jalen Smith really just decides to blow up as a 4, which he's not really in the Summer League, I don't think I like where we're at that position. Every other position, man, home run after home run in free agency, I think.
I think I agree with you, Dave, but like only in the sense of like to give us a buffer for injury. I think you're a little undersized at the 4 with Crowder and Johnson. Although, when Johnson comes in, only a bit. Like he's pretty good size, but he's not like a Saric for sure. hopefully Jalen Smith can maybe slot in. I know he's not a natural 4, but if he's showing good flashes, you can shore that up. I would be concerned, though, if Johnson gets injured, which he kind of did a few different times. I know COVID was part of it, or Jay Crowder or whatever, who I didn't have. I think he played like every game last year, but that's when I would be like, ooh, that's a danger zone to me. I don't know what we're doing with Frank. I feel like we'd let him walk because he doesn't play very well unless no one else takes him and we can pay absolutely nothing to keep him.
I imagine he'll come back for the vet minimum.
Yeah.
Well, also exactly what happened last year. We let him walk. He went and played for the Kings, got cut, and we just grabbed him right back.
Yeah. He's a character guy. Like, I don't... And, I will say...
He knows the system and all that.
Yeah. I will say... I think Monty's higher up on him than we are because he was even saying in postgame, like, I wish we would have run him more. He had some really great flashes. So I didn't really, he played like fine. I saw more of dodging a bullet in the minutes that he was in. Like, it wasn't catastrophic, but I think Monty likes him. He's a high character guy. Why not bring him back?
And I think it's easy to forget that Torrey Craig was unwanted by the team that won the championship.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, I like Torrey. I would have liked to have brought him back. This isn't just like the hindsight thing where, he's gone now, so fuck him. It's not that. But he played like 15 minutes a game in the playoffs, and he was a contributor. I think it's a loss, but do I feel like Abdul Nader can probably provide something close to that? I do. So I don't see that as a gaping hole. I think it's a small loss, but I'm not like, oh my God, what are we going to do without our 9th rotation guy?
Yeah, and for what I would say, I preferred Torrey minutes over Nader minutes, but Monty sure didn't. So, like...
And remember that Nader had half the season missed with an injury. So with a full training camp, with a full season, it may be a little like weight room. We were talking about weight rooms a minute ago. More time in the weight room to bulk up a little bit. That may help again, and especially because he was brand new last year, coming into a season without much of a training camp and a shortened season. There was a lot of things not in his factor, and I think he actually played fairly well in the regular season.
Loved his energy.
He did. There was a period there where we were sort of struggling, and he was like the only person who would drive the ball for like, I don't know, a couple of weeks. He was like the savior. So I like what he brings to the team, especially with our dynamic. We haven't talked about Landry Shamet yet, which is like not nothing. I would expect him to get more minutes than like a Langston Galloway.
Yep.
Well, considering Galloway got 0 minutes, I would too.
Yeah, but
I'm not even opposed to bringing Galloway back either. Again, we got to fill out 14 slots, and if Galloway's amenable to coming back, if Etuan Moore is amenable to coming back, I do want to float 2 other names. I don't want to just dust off Shamet. It's a solid addition, a good backup to an improvement over Galloway. I think a guy you can at least trust in a playoff series, which was an issue with the rotation shortening and then Paul not being 100% and Sharge being gone. Like, you could tell, who else can we throw out there? Like, you can't throw out Langston Galloway because he's a sieve defensively. Like, Giannis would murder him.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice move. There's 2 guys I want to target.
Okay.
Who at least as of Tuesday night are still on the board.
I like this. You don't ever do this, so I'm actually really curious to hear who you want to target. I always get who Dave wants to target. I don't get who you want to target.
We have the mid-level exception, half of it left, $4.5 million, and that should be adequate, if not more than enough. You could almost maybe get either of them on a veteran minimum. I would like to see either Paul Millsap or Andre Iguodala.
Yep.
I'm surprised to hear you say Paul Millsap.
I'm not.
Because I thought Chris specifically though, because I thought you thought he was like washed up and done. Now, maybe you're saying, like as a role as a starter, definitely, but coming in as a contributor.
Yeah, for 10, 15 minutes a game as a backup 4, I have no problem with it. I don't think he's completely washed up, but for the minutes that he was being relied upon, no. He's not a 30, 35 guy anymore. He's that old. He's 36 years old. He's not a 36-minute-a-game guy, but as a backup 4 for depth at that position, and I saw some folks on a couple different Suns forums being like, well, what about Jalen Smith's development? It's like, you guys are forgetting that the preferred method here is for him to earn his minutes, not to be handed them like a fucking child as, say, Dragon Bender or Marquise Chris or any of the other failed experiments that we gave 35 minutes a game to in our darkest hour.
Yep.
How hard is that for Suns fans to get over, almost, that, hey, we got to develop our young guys because that's what we were fed for 10 years. No, fuck the young guys. If you can't win, get off the court. We have guys who can win.
Yeah.
And I'm not even giving up on Jalen Smith yet. He could be the answer next season. I don't think I would take that as the bet on my life moment, but we don't know. It's been 1 season and he barely had a chance to play.
So Chris, let me respond by saying, I'm actually fine with Paul Millsap again in this role. I was wondering, and I was thinking, oh, maybe something's wrong with me, but I was wondering, why are we not trying to sign Iguodala? Like, it seems like there's a need. I don't know if this is true. I heard that Bridges is working out with Iguodala in the offseason.
Supposedly.
So I'm like, that seems really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we doing this? And like, no, I didn't find like an article anywhere about Iguodala coming to the Suns. There seems to be no interest. That's not really how James Jones operates, though. He just kind of does things.
When did the Jay Crowder deal happen last offseason? Was that the third day of free agency? The 4th?
Or 4. Yeah, I think it was the 4th, honestly.
It was a ways in because everybody wants to snap everybody up right away, and then all of a sudden sometimes a quality player can still fall into your lap. So I'm not at the point as of Tuesday night when we record this where I'm like, he's definitely not coming here because we haven't heard anything. Maybe we are pursuing him and we're just not privy to those conversations. Unlike some of his predecessors, James Jones seems to keep his moves close to the chest, so I'm hoping that no news is good news. It's also not the end of the world if we don't get him, but I think he's another guy who can play the 4 in the modern NBA, and obviously we know about his basketball IQ. His defense is still solid. He would hurt our entire team can shoot the free throw well ability, but hey, can't find perfect players for the veteran minimum. That's what the Lakers are going to find out. We'll get to them in a minute.
Well, so how far is this Iguodala from like the, I won't even say prime Iguodala, of course not, but like let's say the Golden State Iguodala, like, is this like a shell of that Iguodala, or is it a little better than that now?
60%.
Okay.
Not a shell, but he's definitely declining. But if you're only looking for a year or two, especially at that pay, then I think it's still a slam dunk.
And he's certainly not I think he's a high character, high IQ guy as well.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the big factor that comes with that.
The absolute worst case scenario of that sign is he becomes a slightly overpaid assistant coach.
Yeah. He's not going to be Trevor Ariza. How's that?
No.
Okay.
I hope not. And if he is, he'll be easy to move because he doesn't make as much as we gave fucking Trevor Ariza.
Well, and he's a defense like play. Like, he's going to try hard on defense, and half the time, like, effort on defense is like it's a huge part of it. And then there's the innate athleticism that you need to be an elite defender. But so much of being a good defender is just effort and IQ and like positioning and knowledge.
Yeah, as I say, the IQ and positioning is big for me because it's not even just effort. Then it's also, okay, like if he has to guard LeBron for 10 possessions in a core game, he knows LeBron's moves, he knows his tendencies. That kind of stuff makes a big difference because, like, Bridges, for example, is learning very quickly. We're watching his evolution on the fly. He hasn't had enough reps to just be like, oh, okay, I'm guarding Ja Morant, so I know he's going to do this move or this move or this move, and when he takes this step, it's going to be this one, and he's learning. But that only comes with experience, and Iguodala has that in spades.
Well, and I like those signings. I would say
I don't expect to get both. I would love to get either.
Whatever. Like, I'm good for it. I'm also hoping, because we haven't said it yet, and maybe it's just assumed, but I really would like to see that. The nice thing about young players is there's at least the chance that they're just going to keep getting better and they're going to develop, into something that's even better. So Bridges, I would like to see him up his ball handling and shooting a little bit. I think his defense is pretty good. He can probably I don't know. It's hard to work on things like foot speed, but sometimes those fast defenders can get by him. Those are the ones that seem to give him the most trouble.
Yeah, if he's going to work on any aspect of his defensive game, I think it's at the point of attack.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be great for him. Ayton, a little bit more offense. Johnson, his development, a little bit improved shooting. I thought he was really good. Just if he could be like an elite 3-point shooter, I think that would be amazing. And then maybe some just rebounding, a little bit of weight as well. I mean, we're going to be in really good shape. Even if we added nobody, I think you look at this team and you're like, yeah, if we can hope that they continue to improve, although regression is also
sure.
a possibility.
But if you're betting on the 4 of those core players, which is Booker, who's still young enough to get at least slightly better, and then Ayton, Bridges, and Cam Johnson, if you're going to ask me to bet my life on will there be more improvement than regression among that group, I would sure as hell hope so.
Yeah.
Yep. I look at who we added this year and who we're bringing back, and you look at who we brought in, and I feel like had we had the people we brought in on this team 3 weeks ago, not obviously not possible, but if we had those people on that team, I think we would have a much better shot at winning than we did otherwise.
Well, and especially when Sharks goes down. Yeah. If we had an Iguodala or a Millsap to just help build the Giannis wall or whatever. Yeah, that's huge.
Even McGee at that point.
Yeah. Oh my God. Who? Not Iguodala and Millsap. That's hypothetical. We actually have McGee.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I look at bringing in somebody like Shamet who can create his own shot a little bit. Bring in somebody like McGee who could be a backup to Ayton, and we don't lose that rebounding more than anything else that we lost when Ayton went out. If we had those two guys on the team last year, I feel like we have a much better shot at winning. So every year is different. Everything will be different next year throughout the regular season and playoffs. But I think that we've improved based on just that.
Yeah, I mean, I know we're not supposed to do this. Right now, I would take us. I would guess quarterfinals. I'm locking that in actually.
As a minimum or as a ceiling?
As a no. We're at least going to make the conference finals. And then we're probably playing the Lakers again, assuming everybody, including ourselves, is healthy. That's a tough one. But I think, here's why. I think we're going to do well in the season. We're going to be hopefully top 3 seed. And then, so that's going to help us in the playoffs. And then, yeah, if we get caught by a hot Clippers team in the semifinals, then, it can happen. But I'm not super scared of the Jazz, Dallas,
Utah,
Denver.
Signed us on Whiteside 10 minutes before we went live.
Yep, I saw that.
No.
Good back.
Okay, just checking.
No. I'm not scared of Utah. I'm not scared of Denver. I'm not scared of Dallas. I'm not scared of, I'm trying to think of any other really good Western Conference teams. And
Golden State.
Golden State's the big question mark to me. And I think they took a flyer on Otto Porter Jr., which I think was a really smart attempt because if he can stay healthy, a massive if for a guy who played like 30 games the last 2 seasons, but he was pretty solid early on in his career for the Wizards and then briefly for the Bulls before he got hurt. And he'd be a perfect fit for them if he's healthy, which obviously also includes Clay and everybody else. But that was a savvy move by them. So between that and their 3 All-Stars being healthy, I'm not saying I'm scared of them. I think right now I would still take us over them, but it's a long ways away yet.
So let me just throw something out there because I'm confused. So I'm the person that had the hot take. I don't think the Celtics are as good as everybody said they were, and they sucked last year. So I have a correct call. I look at Golden State, and I'm like, you throw in. I'll even give them a healthy Clay. With a healthy Clay, their odds for winning the title right now are higher than our odds for making it back. And I'm just like, I don't see it anymore.
That's betting. That's people who bet. Like the Suns have this. They don't have this heavy betting following.
They have to put odds that encourage people to bet the other side.
Okay.
So you can use that to some extent to see who's a favorite and who's not, but they're always going to lean towards the hot trend.
Well, so let me ask you guys then, and try to take off like your Suns fans' hats. Are you super afraid that now Golden State is like, yep, with Clay, they're definitely the favorites?
No, not super afraid. It's a possibility.
How old is Clay now? 34?
No, he's like 30. He's younger than Steph, so he's got to be 30 or 31. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I went the wrong way on that.
Yeah.
Even so, I mean, coming off an Achilles injury is not easy. I mean, Kevin Durant did it, yes, but...
And Breanna Stewart, but the fact remains, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think the best version of them, if everything clicks, is probably better than us, but there's a lot of ifs there, whereas what we have is relatively certain. But, I mean, that team was a game away from the playoffs with... Who was their third best player? Honest question.
Wiseman?
Probably Wiseman.
Wiggins?
Yeah.
I don't question mark, giant shrug.
Pascal?
Like, that roster was trash.
Yep.
So, and this kind of is a segue into this next section, but like... So, okay, they have Clay back. What else have they done with their roster, though?
Well, I'm glad you asked.
Okay.
I had the list of signings by team updated as of, I think, 40 minutes ago or so. Otto Porter Jr. was the big one for me. They also signed Nemanja Bjelica. I think that's how you say his name.
Bjelica, I believe.
Bjelica. That's right. Bjelica. I've heard that, too.
Bjelica. Yeah, that's it.
Who's a nice little stretch 4. I don't know how good he is at this point. He's getting up there in age. I want to say he's like 34. That's it so far, but I don't expect them to stop there, and I expect there's going to be, like the Lakers, a handful of players who sign there for vet minimums to help fill out the back end of that roster. Is that anything to be scared about? I don't know, but their top 4 is pretty good if they're all there.
Well, and I get that. That's my thing. Is like, so you have Draymond, Clay, Steph, Wiseman. Are we saying he's the other, or Wiggins? Is that?
I think especially as a 4th option, there's nothing wrong with Andrew Wiggins.
Okay, but then that's what, like, they don't have the Shaun Livingston, Iguodala depth anymore.
They could get an Iguodala.
Well, right, but we've already said that's like a 60% Iguodala, right?
Yeah, so it's not the same as the Finals MVP Iguodala, no.
And I mean, obviously they don't have KD, which is like who they added that kept that run going. So like, I feel like in some ways we don't know what could have happened because they lose KD and Clay to injuries, and then the next season they lose KD, he goes away, but then Clay doesn't come back either. So I think it's a big question mark for them. I won't say I'm scared of them yet.
I mean, there is Kevon Looney, who is fine. He's definitely an NBA rotation player and definitely not a starter like they tried early in the season. And I think Juan Toscano-Anderson had a decent year for them and is also a rotation guy. So just adding these 2 guys they have, and of course an early draft pick, and does Wiseman continue his development, there's a lot of ways where their season could go quite well. It also could completely crash and burn again. It's really hard to figure them out right now. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, though, which we've sort of alluded to, but the Los Angeles Lakers have signed, and let me take a breath before I say this. Malik Monk, Kent Bazemore, Dwight Howard, Wayne Ellington, Trevor Ariza, Carmelo Anthony, Kendrick Nunn, and then re-signed Talen Horton-Tucker to, I think, a 3-year, $32 million deal. And that's just so far. They still actually need to fill at least one more roster spot. So that's a bunch of stuff from a whole bunch of different points in their career. Kendrick Nunn probably passed up more money to go there. Malik Monk was constantly full of promise in Charlotte, but didn't really pan out. And then they have a bunch of old people.
I'm confused about Malik Monk, actually, because, yeah, he had full of promise, and he signed for the vets minimum. I'm stunned by that move for him. I thought he'd at least get the MLE.
Yeah, that tells me he either got a bad feeling from his agent about what prospects there were out there for him, or he's just like, yeah, that sounds like fun. The hell with it. Why not?
How you feel about this will depend on how you feel about Brian Windhorst's takes, but he was like, I don't know, the Lakers just feel so old now. Like, everything about those moves are like, that is an aging team. And I would say on top of that, that's kind of the impression that I got. I think totally healthy. If we were to run into them in the playoffs and every member, especially of the big 3, is healthy, they would still scare me. But man, I feel like a thin margin of error for them. So
the thing, when you look at their big 3, I don't feel like they fit, if that makes sense, because LeBron and AD obviously go together wonderfully well, but the best part about when they have LeBron and AD and they're playing their best game is LeBron controls the ball and AD is able to rebound, post up, catch, shoot. They work well together. Westbrook has to have the ball in his hand, has to. And then you're taking away what LeBron is best at, which is passing and directing traffic. So now Westbrook all of a sudden is going to barrel into the lane and hope Anthony Davis gets rebounds, kick it out to LeBron for 3. I don't think that fits.
I think the idea is that it's supposed to be sort of like what happened with Westbrook and Harden in Houston, where when LeBron, say, drives on a pick and roll action and he doesn't have a route to the basket and he kicks it out to Westbrook with the defense sort of leveraged in one direction, there's like 8 on the shot clock, that Westbrook just gets to put his head down and attack the defense as it rotates. It can certainly work in a vacuum, but I'm sort of with you where I think there's a lot of talent there, no question. I don't think they don't fit, but I don't think it's just this natural meshing that's going to take place, because off the ball, Russell Westbrook doesn't really contribute a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so there's like two. It's going to go one of two directions. I'm not trying to be like glib, but it's going to be like what Dave said, where it's kind of like a disaster. Like the pieces just don't fit together. My concern is if they can make it fit, it's going to be basically like they were with Dennis Schroeder, but this is a better Dennis Schroeder. They're the same player, but Dennis Schroeder is a poor man's Russell Westbrook. He does everything Russell Westbrook does. Can't really shoot, relies on drives, but worse than Westbrook does it.
I mean, the only thing I'll push back on is that Schroeder shot 40% from 3 last year. Before that, he was a pretty bad shooter. They desperately needed that spacing last season from him. It's part of why they clicked, but Westbrook is not that. So
no,
it's,
no, he's
and
not.
KCP's gone too, by the way. So
yeah. See, that was the other thing.
And Kuzma and Caruso.
Yeah.
And so Wayne Ellington's a good 3-point shooter, but he's barely been able to stay on the floor in an NBA rotation the last 2 seasons. And Ariza can make a corner 3, and Carmelo, I guess, and like Kendrick Nunn's pretty solid, but he's streaky. I don't know. And beyond that, Howard's 35, Carmelo's 37, Ariza's 36, LeBron's 36. Westbrook's 32 and has a ton of mileage on him, and Anthony Davis, while only 30, is dying every other season. So there's a lot of things that could go real wrong real fast.
I mean, they have to be among the oldest NBA team.
I don't even think it's going to be close.
If not, like, easily the most, yeah. So...
and I look at the other thing with too is I look at Westbrook, and Westbrook is the best when he's the only guy on the team. When he was the MVP and had the triple-double season in OKC, he was the reason they were winning is he could just do whatever he wanted to, and everyone just kind of fell in line. Washington last year, he just kind of went, and he played really, really well. But I think that people are overvaluing him because of what he was when he was the only guy on the team.
Yeah, always inflates the stats that way.
Yeah. So I mean, Nunn is a nice player, right?
That worries me almost. Seeing Nunn and Monk come in worried me because I'm like, they have no depth. And then I see fairly solid guys that they can bring off the bench. I'm like, okay, that does worry me even more so than Westbrook.
Yeah, because I mean, who are the guards going to be? I mean, like if Wayne Ellington's a starter, good luck. I don't care how good the players around him are. He's awful defensively. He can't create his own shot. He's a really, really poor man's JJ Redick.
And I mean, I know we're not in love with like Caruso. We don't really get the love affair. Certainly not with Kuzma. But like KCP can be like a really nice player, and all 3 of them are gone. And so does Nunn and Monk and Ellington? Does it replace what they lost there? Like,
and Marc Gasol's old as shit too. I forgot to say his.
I mean, it's not even worth mentioning. What is he gonna do?
He's a dinosaur.
He couldn't even get on the floor in Spain versus USA the other night. I don't think he played a single minute.
Yeah, even though Gasol did, I don't think.
Yeah.
No, Powell played a little bit.
Did he? Okay, I didn't get to watch the first 7 or 8 minutes. We got to talk about a couple more teams real quick before we close up shop. One is Brooklyn, who, if the Lakers aren't the presumptive favorite, at least from the media for damn sure, going into next season, then Brooklyn almost has to be. They pick up Patty Mills for 2 years, $12 million, which is pretty solid. Mills is 33, but hard to argue with the depth.
I hadn't heard that yet.
They brought back Bruce Brown on just the 1-year version of the restricted contract. They added James Johnson, who I think is washed at this point, but as your 10th guy, it's just fine. And they brought back Blake Griffin for the veterans minimum.
And they got the Bulldog, Javon Carter.
Yeah, and they picked him up in the trade for Landry Shamet, and they signed a guy who they drafted. I have no idea who it is. I don't care. I didn't pay any attention to the draft.
Jaguar. Honestly, I don't. You could ask me who was drafted. I could name maybe 3 players.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So, while they didn't improve tremendously, they added a little bit of depth with Mills. They brought back Bruce and Blake Griffin. I mean, and we know what their core is.
Yeah, so, I mean, but it'll again come down to, are they healthy?
Yeah.
They're probably going to win the title. Are they not? They're probably not going to advance very far, and it's that simple.
That's everyone last year saying like, well, we might as well just not play the games and just look at it on paper because then it'll be Lakers versus Nets and we can just all go home and not watch a single game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Both those teams, if they're healthy, they absolutely can meet in the finals.
Yep.
I mean, the track record says they're not going to be healthy.
That's what's been maybe the NBA has always been like this, but to me it's almost been like the saying, like, if they're healthy has seemed to matter more and more and more, like now more than ever in the history of that big question. I mean, how many years, even recently, we had like Golden State and Cleveland like every goddamn year, and like it's been fun. It's been exciting. I don't know.
When we look at other potential contenders, which is the luxury we have as what I think is a potential contender, I don't think that's out of line to say. The Clippers re-signed Nick Batum. And presumably they're going to re-sign Kawhi, which is important. But,
So I heard Nick Batum.
Kawhi. Which hasn't happened yet, but is going to happen. Otherwise, they're screwed anyways. They won't be worth talking about.
Also, Kawhi is not going to be playing most of, if not all of next season.
That's the big thing to me is if he can hit the court, and it depends on the severity of the ACL tear. Good fucking luck figuring out anything with him. I think he's gonna be back when he's on the floor, and we're like, oh, he's here.
Oh, hey.
But if it's a minor tear, he could be back by a month or two before playoffs start, get back into shape, and then be a factor. But that's only if it's that's like best case scenario.
Yeah, we know
right?
he's not going to rush.
No,
Yeah.
and that's the thing with his history. He could be fully ready to go a month or two before the playoffs, and they could be a 2-3 seed. And I don't know that he'd come back. I just don't think.
If he's not playing, I don't think they're going to be 2-3 seed for what that's worth. I think they're better than they thought without him. I still don't think they're going to be that good.
And it doesn't hold up as well during the regular season grind either.
No,
because you got to rest Paul George at least 10 games, right?
Yep.
Denver re-signed pretty much all their free agents: Will Barton, JaMychal Green, Jeff Green, and Austin Rivers, and they get Jamal Murray back. So I think they're still in the same conversation.
When will Murray come back? Is he supposed to be ready for the start of the season, or he?
I don't know if I've heard anything. I would guess, given that injury, it's more like a month or so in, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So it's definitely not going to be as long as like Kawhi.
Yeah, for sure. Or Dario.
So they should get him back in time to get him up to speed for sure. So they were quite solid with him and even decent without him. So I think they still have to be considered a threat. I like our chances against them still, but they're certainly in the conversation. The last team we should talk about, because they're interesting to me, is Miami. Who loses Kendrick Nunn, loses Goran Dragic because it's part of a sign and trade for Kyle Lowry. They give Duncan Robinson a huge 5-year, $90 million deal. They sign our old friend PJ Tucker. They bring in something called a Max Struss. I don't know what that is. And they add our old friend Markieff Morris along with Dwayne Dedmon to add some depth at the big positions.
I did not hear about Morris.
Yeah,
wow.
That was today. Vet minimum there.
Okay.
So what do we think about them? Basically, I mean, look, they kept Duncan Robinson. They lose Nunn and Dragic, but they add Kyle Lowry to that core that was already pretty solid. I mean, yeah, they got dumped in the first round, but guess who they got dumped by? The team that
won the title.
Yeah.
So what do we think about them with Kyle Lowry? Is Miami in the conversation as a contender?
No. I personally don't think so.
I mean, I don't look at them as someone who I would worry about if I'm a Suns fan thinking, man, who are we going to play in the finals? If I had to rank them, I mean, they're not going to be up there. I think, Brooklyn, Milwaukee is up there ahead of them. Maybe even Philly is ahead of them, depending if Ben Simmons can pull his head out of his ass. So they're not
what they get for him.
Yeah, exactly.
They added Andre Drummond, which we know about Drummond's issues, but as to kick the tires on a vet minimum, there's no harm in that. It helps them.
So when I look at Eastern teams, I really don't concern myself with them.
I think maybe I'm undervaluing Lowry. I think he's a nice player. I just don't think he's like the guy that people are saying we want to bring in Lowry to have the Chris Paul effect. And I get that in theory, but like Lowry is no Chris Paul is all I'm saying. So I'm not that worried. And Miami is a team that I compare the Suns to. They kind of came out of nowhere. They went all the way to the finals. Then the next year, they didn't get anywhere close. Again, they hit the team that ended up winning the finals, but they weren't clicking super well even before that. My hope is that they just were a very disciplined team in a time where discipline made all the difference in the bubble. And I'm hoping that we're not going to have that same effect. Like I said, I'm still thinking quarterfinals. Like Dallas, what did Dallas do? Like nothing.
Not much
They
yet.
got rid of Josh Richardson, I know, for something.
Quarterfinals, by the way. Quarterfinals means second round.
No, semifinals is second round.
That's what conference semifinals. So quarterfinals would be first round.
Oh, I meant conference finals.
Conference finals.
So no wonder you guys are like, oh wow, we're gonna make the playoffs.
Asking,
yeah, conference finals.
That makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Conference finals. I'm really high on our team, and I think running it back, I think continuity is going to matter. I think in the early season, when a lot of these other teams are trying to figure out, okay, we've reloaded the roster, what is this looking like? Yeah, they might hit their stride, but all the games matter for seeding. If we can get a high seed, I think it's going to go a long way to avoiding the teams I actually am afraid of, like the Clippers, if they do get Kawhi back, the Lakers, and I don't know, is there anyone else that I'm afraid of in the West, I guess? Oh, Golden State, maybe, depending.
I will say I am actually, it's funny, I don't think Lowry's going to be the difference on Miami, but I'm less afraid of him in Miami than I would be had he gone to the Lakers. I think if the Lakers somehow could have pulled that off, I would have been terrified of them, even more so than Westbrook, I think. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's the fit to me.
There was a brief moment where I was like, are Lowry and DeRozan both going to go to the Lakers? And I was like, oh boy, because they liked each other in Toronto, and this is a chance to reunite and go after a title. I was like, oh man, that would scare me.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Even if Lowry's not quite as good as he once was, and DeRozan, who's changed his game over time, but he's sort of one-dimensional. alongside LeBron and AD, that scares the shit out of me. Well, neither one's going there.
I'm
So
kind of rooting for the Bulls, by the way.
that's a weird mix, but let's see.
I like that they're trying, man. Like, let's bring in DeRozan.
Bring in Lonzo.
Yeah, we're gonna make a
Caruso.
splash, and we're gonna try. And I'm like, you know what? Good for you guys.
You gotta try and win. They did the same thing when they traded for Vucevic. It's a win now move for a team that wasn't really winning. But
yeah,
hey,
Zach LaVine, he seems good. He's no next Devin Booker, but
no, he's better than Devin Booker. Shaun,
well,
don't
bullshit. And I'm glad. I think at least from the eye test, you look at the Olympics and like Booker's one of like the reliable guys. I don't know if you guys have.
He's been doing more. Booker's been doing more on the defense and just the smart plays than scoring, which is interesting considering where he just came from, scoring 40 points a game in the finals.
Well, Kevin Durant, and I know they're teammates now, but like he was just gushing about Booker being like all the things he brings to the game. It's not just scoring, and I think he and Durant. In my head, I'm like maybe they seem to have a really good relationship with a league that, like, he's a mercurial guy. Durant doesn't seem to get along with a lot of people. He and Book seem close. Maybe, just maybe, we can figure out a Durant situation someday.
Cool. We'll have a 38-year-old Durant come to this team.
Fine.
Yeah, well, we can use the money that's freed up by 97-year-old Chris Paul retiring to sign 48-year-old Kevin Durant.
Can I just say that from everything I've heard, like the Chris Paul deal is actually like maybe not a steal, but like it's great for everybody, is what it's sounding like.
It is a phenomenal deal, I think, because we saved $14 million this upcoming season. We got Chris Paul for the next season, in which he'll be 38, yes, but I think it's great. And then you know what? Everyone's been freaking out. I've had people texting me. I've seen stuff online where people are like, man, the Suns are going to hate paying $30 million to a 40-year-old. I'm like, I hope we pay $30 million to a 40-year-old because that means he's good.
Yeah.
We can cut his ass if he's not good.
Yep.
Yeah, if it was just a straight up contract, which I keep getting pelted by emails, if it was just a straight up contract, it'd be a disaster, no question. Yeah. But it's not just 4 years, $120 million. Yeah, we didn't really give him or campaign the due diligence, but we don't need to talk about their game. We've already dissected that more than enough. So just thrilled to have both back. Let's see how it goes next season.
Those are the two biggest ones for me. Was I like Torrey, I like some of the other guys, but like when you bring back Paul and Payne, I was surprised by how much I was like, please bring Payne back. I think he plays a really important role on this team that you're not going to be able to like fabricate on another team.
Yeah.
Payne, I cannot believe we only got for $6 million a year. I thought he was going to get 10 for sure. When I saw that deal, I was like, holy shit, we robbed him. I feel bad for him. We robbed him. But hey, great.
I wonder how much of that is, and again, like you want to be careful because I don't want to like not reward his loyalty, but I think he just really likes being here. I think he likes our team. I think he likes our culture, our coach.
We saved him, basically.
Yeah. So I think that's a big part of it.
I think he also recognizes his own limitations.
Yeah.
Is there the possibility that he could have maybe been a starting guard somewhere? I guess maybe, but even among the bad teams, like a Cleveland, for example, he's not going to start for the Cavaliers.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out what the hell they have with their young guards there. So, like, it's a pretty good situation. He's well liked. They gave him a second chance, and he could still play his way into a bigger contract. So, I mean, he probably should have gotten a bit more, but I'm happy to have him back, especially at that price. And he seems thrilled. So, who am I to say?
And it's a 3-year deal. So, like, it's like here's some security for a decently long stretch of time. So I did like that. Are we not afraid of the Rubio, Kevin Love, Cleveland Cavaliers?
Not when they buy out Kevin Love and we sign him for the veterans minimum, baby.
Oh.
Except he would go to the Lakers because of Russell Westbrook and the LA connection. But still, baby.
If Rubio plays like he did against the USA last night, then I am terrified of Rubio.
Yeah, international play, like for a lot of players, changes a person, and that version of Ricky Rubio would scare the shit out of anybody.
Yeah.
Couldn't guard the man. He scored 38.
It was insane. He did great.
Alrighty, so that's going to bring us to our conclusion of our NBA chat. We may not talk about it again until basically it's time for a season preview, because we deserve a break, and so do you, let's be honest. But there's still lots to do in a future episode. We have Ted Lasso to talk about. We have Space Jam 2 to talk about, which isn't basketball, so it doesn't fit that category.
Ooh, burn.
We got some video game topics we never got to. There's all sorts of things. We'd spent a week together in Phoenix. We haven't even talked about that yet. So we have all these things to get to. It's just going to be non-basketball related. Goodbye, Suns. We loved the season. We'll see you in 2 months, and we'll cross our fingers for next season.
Run it back.
Hell yeah. I had it into the side because I figured you guys would say yes, but what the hell, Now we're going to do it. It's the end of the show. In between episodes, you can find us on our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork, where we're currently going over the best music from Trails of Cold Steel. We'll see you next time.